Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everybody. Happy Halloween. I love you all. My name is MiAhtheking, and if you're a soldier who survived mustard gas and pepper spray, you are now a seasoned veteran. Thank you so much for clicking on my video. If you're wondering why you clicked on my video, then let me tell you. For the corny one-liners at the start of each video, of course, or perhaps because I'm one of the few reviewers out there who can help you figure out if you need a game in 10 minutes or less. Or perhaps because I don't make excuses for multi-billion-dollar industries or involve politics in my videos. Either way, there's also no spoilers here. Now then, today we're taking a look at a highly anticipated game that just released on Steam called Age the Veilguard. I know, I typically don't do AAA games, but this is a favorite of mine and I had to take a look at it. A fantasy RPG with a very, very long history. The game was obviously developed by BioWare and published by EA. Released not in early access and selling for, believe it or not, only $60. Not $70? That means that either EA is just giving us a break for once, which I highly doubt, or even they don't think their game is worth $70. That's not a good sign. Now, I don't want to get into the political controversy surrounding this game. This is not the channel for that. Regardless, I want to mention the shady business practices of them picking and choosing certain reviewers to give keys to because other reviewers were too critical, or how they decided to focus their media on a politically divisive issue when that should never be a thing in video games ever. Here, we're taking a look at the game itself without any prejudice or bias because simply put, I want to help you save money. So, let's begin. Keep in mind that for a game like this with a certain level of pacing and whatnot, I simply cannot do a full review here. So think of this video more as a first impressions, okay? Now then, I myself first discovered BioWare with KOTOR way back before most viewers' times, but I didn't know it was BioWare. I discovered that when I first played Mass Effect, and I became a fanboy for life. I've played almost everything that they've ever made, and Dragon Age has been one of my favorites. I was disappointed with Dragon Age 2 and unsatisfied with Inquisition, as none yet had been able to match the amazingness of the first game. And now we're here again, with modern-day BioWare, and a new game release. I'm not sure if I'm even looking forward to this anymore, not after Anthem and Andromeda, but let's press on. The gist of the story, without spoilers, is going to require you to have already played the previous games, but basically you're some random guy with a random backstory you can pick and customize, who is working with Varric to locate Solas. Why? Because he's trying to tear down the Veil. If you're already lost, then go play the other games. Anyway, some crazy stuff happens, and now a brand new evil is revealed, and it's your job to stop them. I can't and won't go into this possible spoiler stuff. So now let's go into the good and the bad, starting off first with the good. So the first positive point I'd like to really talk about is the price tag. In a world of multi-billion-dollar executives deciding to charge us $70 for video games because prices have risen for some reason and they need the extra money, comes a rare occurrence of EA actually not following the trend to earn them more money and instead charged us only $60 for this game. Wow, never thought I'd be happy to see a $60 price tag again, but hey, it's still nice. And here it actually feels like you're paying for something that might actually be worth the price tag. So thank you, EA, for not being too greedy. I mean, you are, but still. The next positive point I'd like to talk about is the graphical design. Now, I have some negatives to talk about it, but I do want to say that there are many, many times where the game looks incredible. I mean, the game looks freaking amazing in some scenes. Look at the contrast, the attention to detail, the coloring, and the overall awe-inspiring quality in these graphics here. I mean, they just look great. But then you get to the other points that are a bit unimpressive. What is up with those fingers? Why is there no detail here? It's a close-up. This isn't The Sims. And if you understand who one of the developers of the game is, you get that joke. You couldn't add some lines and some dirt to make it more realistic? What's the matter with you? So the graphics are kind of hit and miss. Sometimes it'll look beautiful, and sometimes it's going to look like a thumb. It's a bit up and down, so it can be a bit disconcerting, but I guess overall the graphics seemed fine, for the most part. To me, the character art, armor, weapon, and magic quality need to be top-notch, and again, for the most part, they are. I mean, the magic looks freaking sweet. And another thing they got right was the facial animations during dialogue. Now, I personally didn't see anything wrong with any of the facial animations. In fact, it looked really good whenever there was a close-up of someone's face. So, that was good. The next positive point I'd like to talk about is the stability. A lot of times, in a lot of different scenarios, these games will release in a crappy state. Buggy, glitchy, or otherwise unremarkable. Here, however, I personally didn't discover anything worth mentioning negatively. The game ran super smooth. There was no glitching, crashing, frame rate drops, or anything. In other words, if you've got the PC specs to handle it, then the game works great. This is not a Bethesda game. However, I have read online a lot of other people frequently crashing, so be forewarned. Alright, so that's pretty much the only things I can think of that are worth mentioning positively about the game. Next up, we gotta go into the negatives, but before that, do me a favor and consider joining my Royal Guard. How? Just click a few buttons. Like, comment, and subscribe. Or just one of the buttons. Or two. Or all three. Maybe hit that bell too. I mean, the bell lets you know when I review games, and I review games all the time at random, and they're pretty random choices too, which means you never know when I might review a game you didn't even know you wanted, so stay informed and hit that bell. Alright? Alright. Now on to the negatives. Now for me personally, the sound design wasn't great. Now it's not awful, it's definitely trying. However, the music is fairly uninspired, especially if you compare it to other RPG games like Baldur's Gate 3, which has music I still find myself humming to. The sound effects themselves sound perfectly Dragon Age, as you'd hope. Spells and monsters in combat sound great. I love the spell flinging sounds. And then you've got the voice acting. Now, don't get me wrong, for the most part, it sounds fine. The guy doing the main character and the guy doing the dwarf are good enough. But the chick playing Nev just... it sounds like she's being super lazy. She puts almost no effort into her dialogue and doesn't match the tone of what's going on, ever. I mean, in the midst of chaos all around, with demons and magic and explosions flinging about and combat here and there, she's as calm as a cucumber. And it's not like she's some crusader or something, she's just some person. Not calm in demeanor, by the way, just calm in tone. No inflection on words that needed them, no urgency despite her technically needing to be urgent. And she didn't get much better throughout. And the dialogue itself was also kind of dumb at several points.
Oh, people! Where'd you come from?
The elven gods Elganan and Gillenane have escaped from Fen'Harel's prison, and it seems like they want to destroy the world.
Oh, yes, that is very much for the worse.
Some of the dialogue is just so boring and uncreative or cringy or just sounding off, and I don't know what or why, but the dialogue so far has been very much less than average. I don't look forward to it, and I find myself skipping through it most of the time. Next up for the negatives is the gameplay. Now again, don't get me wrong, it's not bad per se, but there are issues, like it's not perfect. For instance, combat is super streamlined. You can't control your companions, only give them commands rarely, which is fine, it's like Mass Effect. But this isn't Mass Effect, this is Dragon Age. The combat is kind of fun, but it's also really simple. You get limited abilities to utilize in combat, and then several different combo moves based on how you click, basically. But after a few hours, the main combo moves will probably become a bit boring. Now they can be adjusted as you level up, I think, so there's still some hope, but it's still just not super creative. It's fun, but it's also too simplified, and I was using magic. I can't imagine what it would be like using the other classes. That's probably going to be a lot more boring. The game also seems to be very linear, which I guess is fine, but after the last few games, I was expecting it to be a bit more broad. So far, it's just follow this path killing things, and then cutscene and dialogue, rinse and repeat. Hopefully this will improve later on, and the game will introduce more gameplay components or mechanics, but at first it's just not very inspiring. Enemies don't even drop loot! There's no looting your enemies in a Dragon Age game! Why? Clearly they're trying to divert from typical RPG mechanics and are headed more towards action-adventure, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here for more RPG stuff, not action-adventure stuff. And Dragon Age has been a long line and a long history of being similar to more traditional and typical RPG mechanics, yet those are not here. You have dialogue options and influence with your teammates, maybe romances, maybe not. So far my decisions have had consequences, so that's a good sign. Overall, I think the gameplay is average. Next up for the negatives is the user interface. It's very basic and bland, it's very unoriginal and simple. You can toggle and use up to 3 abilities at once, as I mentioned earlier, and, well, you can see all the UI has to offer right now. It's just not what I expected or wanted. Alright, now this video is already getting way too long, so I'm going to start wrapping it up. To summarize, the game has great graphics until it doesn't. It has fun gameplay until it doesn't. It has average sound design and below average dialogue. The combat is fun but repetitive with the hopes of possibly becoming better. The UI stinks, and the game is fairly stable while also being at an old school price. So with everything I've seen and everything I've said, I would label this game as perfectly average. It's not great, it's not terrible, just average. Everywhere it shines, it also smudges. One point you'll be smiling, the next you'll be rolling your eyes and cringe. It's a damn shame too. I grew up on these guys' games, literally, and for a new game like this, of this IP, I just was really expecting something greater and grander. Now obviously this is just a first impressions look at the game, but at my first impressions I was starting to get bored. I didn't care about my companions or talking or bonding with them due to their dialogue. I had no real motivation to continue or progress. I didn't know who I was, why I was here, or anything. Like I knew I was tracking down Solas, but why me? Why am I working with Varric? Where did I come from? Like what's the point? And I was kind of enjoying the combat a little. But I had no desire to explore in these thin linear pathways I was forced to walk through. I had no desire to search for any extra loot or rare collectibles or anything because they simply just aren't there. I didn't care about the extra shit that might be laying around because it's just not there. Hell, my first chest was right in front of me as soon as I opened a door. It had some new armor in it, but I didn't even have to look for it or kill anything to get it. I think the game might become interesting and entertaining after you get several hours in, maybe, but without that, it'd be really hard for me to recommend or warn people about it. So at this point, take what I say and make your own judgment. I personally thought the game was just average, and not super big or awesome like I was hoping, or like it should have been. I mean, this is Dragon Age. This isn't just some random BS game. It is an incredibly popular IP, and that in itself is kind of a shame. So that's all the time I got for now, everybody. Thanks so much for watching, with a special thanks to those of you who stuck around to the end. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I can't wait to see you all again on my next adventure. So until then, I bid you all farewell.